Today on Nozzlehead Notes podcast, we're going to be talking about plant health, what's important for timing, what we see for disease pressure, and then what the benefits are of a plant health application. All this coming up next on Nozzlehead Notes podcast. All right, Jared, we're back again. Going to hit some good plant health topics here, but we'll start with our updates that we normally do from our regions. And so I'll let you get into it and what's going on in your area.
Well, we are starting fungicide applications. Crops are moving along quickly, especially the corn crops. Beans are starting to get close to canopy in a lot of areas, but we could definitely use the rain. Most of my area has caught a few here and there, but we could always use a little bit more. The dry and hot weather is going to be the theme of the week, and I think that's going to be followed with a lot of fungicide. How about your area?
Well, kind of similar. We could use some rain in some areas. We picked up some in a couple different spots, but we still kind of a little bit dry, and we probably could use a little bit more to make up some ground here where we're overall dryness throughout the spring here. So things are looking better in some areas, and in some areas got missed with that, and that's always tough when you get the dryland acres or whatever to figure out what's going on there. I think we've got fungicide applications are probably about 10 days, maybe 2 weeks away from really being going for us, where we get a lot of fields of tassel. Just like we've talked all year long, we've got crops that are in various stages, so they're all over the board from that aspect, and so we're probably a little bit there. A lot of guys, I think, trying to make some decisions maybe about where they are, the type of year they've had. We've had some weather and some struggles, and we've got some heat now, and this becomes the time when people start to waffle a little bit about their decisions, or whether it be plant health or anything they're going to do for the rest of the year with their crop.
Yeah, and I guess I'll give you this advice, because it seems like we're just a touch ahead of you, and don't get caught off guard when those tassels start coming out. We had a lot of guys say, well, we planted corn a little bit later than normal, but with the heat, we caught up fast. And, over 4th of July weekend, we started seeing tassels. And I think today, a lot of aerial applicators are really hitting the jets, and these retailers are really hustling to see what's ready to go, because I think we thought we had a little more time than we did. So, like I said, we've got tassels poking. We've got tassels out, full tassel out on some fields, and it's rock and roll time. And, as we think about Veltyma, we probably could have been starting a little sooner on some of these fields as well. And so I guess for you guys, my advice is, let's go out and see where we're at, because we're a lot closer to fungicide, even though we planted later in some of these areas than we may want to give credit for.
Yeah, I think, when we talk about that, it's a good point to bring up kind of what we're talking about for timing wise and how long you have and everything else like that. And so like today, I was in a cornfield this morning. It was a B10-ish type of thing right in there somewhere. And I didn't cut it open, slice it open, but we're just based on the collars and things that we saw. And looking at that one, you like you say, somewhere between V14, V16, we probably see tassels start to poke through. So we're 4 or 5 leaves away. That starts clicking off 2 days a leaf in some of this really hot, warm, humid weather. Then we're talking, like you say, it's not that far away, and then boom, here in 10 days, we're rocking and rolling too. So it could be even faster.
I think the hard number on that's right. 50 GDDs after V10, you get a new leaf every 50 growing degree day units. So doesn't really take long. But I always use 2.5 as my rule of thumb in my area for that full leaf to come out. So my guidance for anybody that's out there that wants to know where they're at, go out and pull the top of that whorl out. You don't have to pull the whole plant. Just go out and pop the top of that out, where, count how many leaves are in that whorl that don't have a collar. For every one of those you count, roughly 2.5 days. So 2 leaves or less, you're within a week in theory. If it gets cooler, obviously that slows down a little bit. But overall, that's a pretty good rule of thumb to kind of give you a rough idea on where we might be at.
Yeah, and looking at our forecast, I'm not sure about yours, but looking at ours, it doesn't look like we're going to get really much cooler. Yes, right now we're in the upper 90s. Today the heat index is around 100, 102, so it's pretty steamy here today. But even when it cools off, we're still talking mid 80s to 90s. So we're going to be clicking around GDDs and everything else like that too, I think. And it's going to probably, like you say, don't get too complacent, don't get too comfortable, because it'll sneak up on you. And the benefit, I think you mentioned it earlier with Veltyma, is that we talk about the first tassel, no hassle. And so once we see a tassel pop up with Veltyma, we know that we can go. We have adjuvant flexibility at that stage. We know we're still in that optimum window. And then on top of that, we know that we're going to be doing the right thing when it comes to stress reduction as well as disease control, because we're getting an application right on at the beginning of reproductive time.
I think that's important to note as we think about the critical time to protect that plant. It's really during that early grain fill and pollination period. That's the most crucial timing. We talk about, we got guys that do early fungicide apps too, right? And there's timings to go in between there prior to tassel. But what we're really trying to key off of is protecting that window. So heck, you could go out on that younger corn that you were looking at, Brady, and spray that. But some of the concern is those leaves that weren't out aren't protected. And two, we can only get so much residual out of these products that going too early leaves you exposed on the backside of that grain fill period. So that's why when we're talking timing, it's critical that we're talking around that tassel and onward, because that's when really we see the best bang for our buck. It's not that we can't get return at the other timings. It's just if you want to maximize your dollars, that's typically where we've seen the best response with fungicides.
Right. And, it's interesting. I was talking to one of our local dealers, actually, who's done quite a bit of their own fungicide plant health work. And, they see with the ROI and everything that they've seen over the last 4 years, they, with their own data, have averaged 10.5 bushels. And so that goes to show you that, 2021 was a different year than what 2018 was. And so year in and year out, that's averaging over the years. Years where they've gotten higher stress and obviously higher disease pressure, those are the years where they've gotten even higher numbers out of that type of thing. But even in years where you didn't have what was evident to be a lot of stress, they're still getting an average return and still seeing the return on investment.
And I'll say we've consistently seen 10, 12, even 15 bushel responses. I think some of that is proportional to your crop potential too, right? I think we see dryland and irrigated acres percentage stretch differently on how much bushel response we see. And in disease years, like you said, we really see that number stretch because we're protecting against more than stress. We're also protecting against the disease as well. So, I think some of that depends, but we very consistently see nice responses out of fungicide when it's timed properly, which is why I like stressing that. And I think it's important to discuss here as we get into this season.
Well, and I think, I was talking to that same dealer this morning, and he was asking me, he said, I've got a guy who's got hailed out and they're looking at, maybe a predicted yield around 200 bushels and should they spray? And my comeback was, why not get 210? Right? I mean, if you're where we are with prices and commodity prices and those type of things like that, what's another 10 bushels at this point? It's going to be that could be significant in dollar wise. And so don't necessarily sell yourself short in crops. We understand there's certain situations like dry land, and there's where they have, they've really had some rough weather, or maybe they got reduced stand and they've had no rain, those type of things like that. If it's not going to make 100 bushel, a fungicide application is not going to save it. However, when you've still got significant plant populations out there, you've still got significant potential, and you've got enough of a moisture reservoir to work with, then you've got some value that you can see in those applications.
And it only takes a couple rains. That's the other thing I always tell guys: are you preparing for the future, or are you looking at the past? Yeah, we see it's dry, like right down here right now. I got a lot of guys hesitant because we're in a dry spell, but all it takes is a couple rains. We're going to fill that grain. We're going to see lots of potential jump into this, and we need to be proactive in that approach. Waiting and seeing can still work, but if we wait so long, we're going to miss this crucial window. And so I think this is important to note. Maybe a nice transition here is stressing a little bit on timing, but whether you're talking about disease or stress reduction, you want to be on the front side of it versus the back, because it's hard to be reactive with the fungicide. So even though it's dry now, we don't have disease. If it would start raining, I don't want to wait till R3 when we're starting to get into that dough stage. And now I want to spray it because now I've missed that opportunity to protect against those stresses and prevent the disease. Really hard to make it go away once you're there. So again, when it gets to the right timing window, even though the weather may not be perfect right now for what you think is the best yield potential or the best disease environment, we utilize the residuals and the other benefits out of this to buy through that important time frame and protect those bushels.
We've seen that we've had some people that have been hesitant to do the earlier applications, and they think they need to wait till brown silk. And this is almost a whole another podcast. We could talk about brown silk in it, but really, I mean, it's one of those things that they're waiting because they maybe had some concerns about the crop safety or something like that. But what we see is those guys who spray earlier, it makes a significant amount of difference between getting on the front end and protecting that window versus the latter end. And we see guys that, hey, like southern rust is a disease that'll come in late sometimes. They want to wait in case they do that. We still see that the guys that protect during that crucial period of time, even though that southern rust will come in late, maybe even be present on the leaf a lot, they've established enough of a base and a healthy plant there that plant will still go on and yield, beyond its potential type of thing like that. So it's really, you're not needing to wait in a lot of these cases like guys think you need to.
I truly believe the consistency and the performance of the products are better on the front side. We have that plan. We get it on in a timely fashion. We get the most out of it. It's no different than the weed control conversations we've had all summer here. The reactive approach that we get often gets us in trouble because we've lost the maximum opportunity. So again, I guess to just kind of wrap this up, we're beating a dead horse at this point a little bit, but timing is critical. And I'll just tell you down here, we're at it. We're in the timing window to start spraying these fungicides, especially Veltyma. I think there more fields than not are in the Veltyma window in my area. And frankly, once we get to full tassel, we'll see a lot of these other fungicides like Headline Amp start to go out the door as well. And probably before I talk to you, we'll have put a lot of acres on. But we don't want to miss this opportunity because timing, in my opinion, is the first critical step to getting the most out of your fungicide.
Yep. No, I think you're spot on there. And my word to my people would be, hey, be ready because it's coming type of thing like that. And you give us I always kind of use you as a little bit of a judgment when things start. I know I've got probably a week to 10 days before I start being in the same boat. So given the geography. So definitely, I think that's something that here, the middle of July, that we're going to be a little bit late for us. I mean, we typically a lot of times start right after the 4th, but when it hits, then it'll go. And we're going to have such a variable planning group that we'll have it scattered over a while yet, too, from that aspect. So.
Yeah, and I think with that one note, it will spread out maybe a little longer than normal, but not too much. I don't want to get caught in that trap either. You and I've probably talked about this. You can plant a month apart and it'll still tassel within the same 2 weeks. The heat units tend to catch it up. I mean, unless you're dramatically behind that, we were already seeing it here in Illinois, Missouri. We had some of that late planted corn a lot closer than we think if we start getting out there in it. And I just, again, be proactive. Don't get caught off guard because you're right. You may have a wider window than in a traditional year, but it's not that much more.
Right. Exactly. Good points. Well, with that, Jared, probably better wrap it up here. And but we're going to continue focusing on plant health with our podcast here for the next few weeks. So appreciate everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe down below in YouTube. If you're listening on SoundCloud, be sure to like and let us know how you're enjoying it. So from that, we'll talk to you next time, guys.